afternoon, folks. I'm not going to use a mic, so I'm just going to try project, and thanks for coming close. If the tables feel awkward, I just wanted to allow people, you're going to be doing some homework and some writing, so whether you want to write on your lap or have access to the table, you'll see we're going to be doing a little group work and a little brainstorming together as well. So my name is Lindsay Coulter, and I work at the David Suzuki Foundation as David Suzuki's Queen of Green. Is one of my titles. And I wanted to start off with a story. So when I was about 9 years old, I said that one day, you know, when aunts, uncles, relatives ask what you're going to be when you grow up, I told, I think they're slowly filtering out. So I told my relatives that one day, David Suzuki and I were going to be like this. And at the time, so I was 9 at the time, I watched Nature of Things every week, and I knew David stood for, you know, saving the planet, loved nature, loved animals, and I wanted a piece of that. I didn't know what that looked like as a career or as a job, and I can assure you I didn't stalk him all the way here. It's just sort of how life ended up. So I've been at the David Suzuki Foundation for almost 6 years now, and I have a zoology degree. I did lots of science, but lots of communicating science more recently. And when I had my own personal green wedding, was sort of when I was spurred into the spotlight of looking at another spokesperson at the foundation, where I was getting the media calls on how to have a green Christmas, how to have a green vacation, and we started to realize that these things, like me making my own laundry soap in my kitchen, really started to resonate with a huge audience that we had at the foundation, which was a big group of demographics-wise, Gen X women, 30-something, post-secondary education, with children. But if I was to put it into terms of what Terry O'Reilly was more speaking about, these were people that cared about the planet, maybe didn't know that they did yet, but they knew they wanted to have safe families, you know, healthy food on the table, and they were time limited and didn't need to be overwhelmed. And so that's sort of a group that I speak to on a daily basis. How do I reach them with my stories? You might be familiar or not with on the bus, on the train. Every Monday, folks read my green column, Ask the Queen of Green. It's like an Ann Landers column, runs every Monday. So that's sort of my attempt to reach out to those, again, who don't know that they have things in common with us at the David Suzuki Foundation. I also have a great working relationship now with Canadian Living magazine, which is very women, you know, 30 to 60s. And I get a monthly tip in here, and I've covered lots of stories for them ever since we spurred a relationship that I'm going to tell you a little bit more about. David and I share radio spots on Jimmy Pattison donates in-kind airtime to us on 29 of his stations in Alberta and BC. And we get a 30-second little green tip. Has anyone heard those before? They run in places, again, that we don't reach out to. My redneck friends that I bought my horse from in Rocky Mountain House hear these green tips, might be the only green thing they hear. Cranbrook, Fernie, Prince George, and all over the island as well. So that's another way that we get some of our messaging out. And of course I have the blog and some things on the website as well. So now I just wanted to kind of cast out, we're going to talk a little bit about storytelling. You're going to get to practice some of your skills today, and you're going to leave with some homework as well at the end. And I'm going to just grab my phone really quickly so I can keep track of the time, because we have until 2 o'clock. So I'd just like to take a minute or two, if I could hear from you guys, what you think it takes to make a good story. So we know that facts, figures, and arguments aren't enough to have people, you know, need emotion. We need to tap into their values to create change. One statistic I heard in this room for the first time at a storytelling workshop was numbers numb people, jargon jars people, And this fellow was American, so he said no one ever marched on Parliament Hill over a pie chart. And so he was a huge believer in storytelling. So what does it take to tell an effective story?
A character.
Character.
A good beginning, middle, and end.
Okay, so progression.
Purpose.
Drama.
Purpose was spoken about today. Drama.
Humor. Engagement.
Brevity.
Excellent.
Interest.
Interest.
Yeah.
Relevance.
Relevance.
Underlying message.
There should be a moral or something, an underlying message.
No plot necessary?
The plot.
Details that fill out the whole picture so that we can actually relate to it in many levels.
So to pick on the, what allows you to relate? When you were hearing Terry Riley speak on some of the ad campaigns, could you see yourself as that Parisian in Paris thinking about whether you're going to take the metro or not? Or as that, like, a good storyteller, good stories allow other people to see themselves in your story. If people can't see how they might apply or what it might have to do with them, they often can't relate it. Good stories are those that are retold. I'm sure we've heard David speak. Maybe this will be your first time later today, but I tell David's stories all the time because they simplify complicated issues. They really resonate with folks, and I remember them because they meant something to me. I want to just say that you're all storytellers, and most of us have 10 stories that we tell. So think about it this way. You have the why you do what you do story. You have the why you live where you live story. You have the how you met story. And if you're thinking to yourself, I don't know if I really have 10 stories, the trick is ask your spouse or ask someone you live with or your mom or dad, which story, and they'll tell you which stories that you tell over and over and over again to figure out your 10 stories.
Oh, yeah.
But we're all very capable at storytelling, and you can use this to get over barriers, which can create the drama sometimes, to actually get over an obstacle. And it's really important that we show up in our stories. So we're going to practice this in this group as far as storytelling goes. And what's going to happen is you're going to pair up with someone else close to you. And I want you to take, you're going to have 2 minutes each to tell a story. And while you're telling your story, the other person has to be an active listener. No interrupting, no asking any questions. You've only got 2 minutes. And this story is going to be about why you're here today. I just told you when I was 9 the why I'm standing here today story. But why are you here today? What brought you here today? You can also think of it, you can also use, if you have, most of us do, a David story. Again, like I just told about it, a time when he impacted you or something that he said. But basically, why you're here today, what brought you here. So take a few seconds to just think about how you might frame this, and I'm going to give you some tips here on how you're going to tell this story to your partner. Go slowly. 2 minutes is actually a really long time, and don't rush. Don't have too many lists of facts, but slow down to the point of discomfort. That'll really help your listener out. And but in that vein, also trust the nature in what you want, in how you want to say something. So it doesn't have to be scripted, and I'll remind you about the time, but trust the nature of how you actually want to get this story across about why you're here today. So partner up, and you've got 4 minutes. I'll let you know when the 2-minute mark is up. And why are you here story? Okay. Thanks so much for getting to your stories so quickly. Now I want to ask folks, what did you notice in telling your story? Was it easy? Was it hard? to come up with that why you're here story? Not too hard?
No.
I would say it wasn't hard, it was a challenge.
Okay.
It's definitely a challenge too.
Wrap it all into...
That's right.
Did anyone, what did you notice in the listening when you had an actual active listener?
I had questions that came up, and I had to really bite my tongue
Let
not
them
to ask
finish.
right away.
Let them finish, yeah.
But there's passion behind people's stories.
Pardon me?
Passion.
Passion. Was there vulnerability in any of that? Sometimes a really good story is, or someone, it's just about someone being really authentic about why they're here, whether it's that they're frustrated or they're upset or they're feeling overwhelmed or they wish other people would take action. Did you hear some of those themes?
Yes, and the other thing that really mattered to me was that was actually speaking for me.
Okay.
You know, the parallels, mutuality.
That's what I heard in the morning session, that some people said, oh, that's also why I'm here. The reason that you're here is, that's another one of why I'm here today. Any elements of surprise or twists, things that you weren't expecting about, that came out in anyone's story? Relatively predictable.
Yes, when Joseph said, his theme is don't be a cow. And then he went on to explain why.
What that meant?
Yes.
Excellent. So he might left you wanting more. Were folks able to paint a picture in the story? Were you able to kind of visualize maybe where that person was coming from? So now I want you to work, you're going to go back to your partners, and I want you each to come up with, you're going to work together to come up with a title for your story, and you're going to work together to come up with a title for his story. So you're trying to capture really what that was about. But you're going to have to agree on the title, because chances are they might have been trying to communicate something and you heard something else, or maybe you got to that. What Terry O'Reilly was talking about, the David Suzuki Foundation isn't in the business of protecting nature, saving grizzlies. There's something else, we're at having people exist in this, not just exist in this world, but really live in this world, or we're about health, or we're about, he was saying, I don't know if he gave this example today, he gave us the example yesterday, he said the FedEx one, and Goodyear Tires isn't in the business of selling tires, they sell safety. And so see in that story, to go that one question deeper, that one level deeper about what that person's story was really about. And you might find that might incorporate into the title. So think about what the story was about, and I want you to work together to come up with a title for each of your stories, and you've got another 4 minutes to do that. And then we're going to hear a few of the titles back after. Okay, folks, want to wrap it up? I'd love to hear who would like to share the title that you came up with for one of the stories.
I'll do one. Her story, sharing with neighbors.
Sharing with neighbors.
And we have one here. So the path less traveled, don't be a cow.
That sounds like it was a compromise.
And mine was bringing it home.
Wisdom.
Telling stories with pictures.
Jeremy's here was excellence of being human, the journey of zero emissions.
Okay.
One of ours is break down, break through. So break down.
Find a path again. Great. Well, I wanted to share a donor story, essentially, out of the David Suzuki Foundation. That this is a letter I got. Geez, how long ago was it? A year or two ago. And we're going to pick it apart a little bit. We sent out, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with our campaign to get toxics out of cosmetic products. Yes, guys, these are the soaps and shampoos that you use as well, and toothpaste. So this is a list of the dirty dozen. Chemical ingredient names most of us can't pronounce. And it's hard to read the fine print on any bottle in the grocery store. That was one of our campaigns, and we mailed this out to 10,000 new donors, okay? So this is the letter that I received back. I have to admit that sometimes it all seems impractical. Case in point, the wallet card, listing all the dangerous ingredients in products. My wife and I went through all of the products we use and found that every one of them had one or more of the listed ingredients. So what? What to do? Don't wash, don't put on deodorant, don't brush my teeth. Okay, so now I'm filthy, stinky, and I have foul breath. Then I go into our local pharmacy and ask for assistance to locate products without the harmful ingredients. Yeah, that'll go over well. Like they'll have time for that. Fat chance. That will be more difficult than trying to buy something in a toy store that isn't made in China. So what do you hear in that? This is sort of the day-to-day stuff that I deal with in my job as the Queen of Green. What do you hear in that story?
Limiting beliefs.
What do you mean by that?
A belief that there's only this and that, and those are the only options.
Choices like good products and bad products, period?
And that the pharmacy is the only place you can go to get.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
And brand loyalty to Procter & Gamble and all of that.
I heard grief, frustration.
Hopelessness, sense of hopelessness.
Yeah, what do I do now? This is great, you just informed me, but, okay. What?
Sounds good. I thought I heard a little anger that you're calling them to action. You know.
You've just dumped this on my lap and now you
Yeah,
want me
I
to do
want you
something
do
about it.
something on this
What am I
topic
supposed to do?
Anyway, so thanks for making me feel guilty.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a bit of guilt in there.
Well, it's conflict also between environmental, I guess, conscience stricken and then the social aspects. You don't want to go out and filthy and dirty with your friends and family.
The reality, yeah. Yeah. So once he grappled with the fact, oh great, now everything I own is toxic, and therefore I cannot use it because I believe what you tell me, and then how am I supposed to now go source safer products? So what do you think this person, to move that person out of the grief or the frustration, what would it take to, do you think, to get to that person? What values would I tap into? How would we message, develop a better tool, product, talk about the issue with this person to move them out of to that next step?
Well, if it's the time they're worried about, you tell them where they could get the products.
Yeah.
And I think it would be the time to do this on
To
their
do all
own.
the research.
Sort of like, well, I usually go to London Drugs. Where else do I go? And how much more time? Because I don't have any extra time, and now you've told me the best part. So
Right.
it would be, yeah.
I heard in there that it's just too hard and you need to make it easy for me.
That's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I just said. Yeah.
I also heard, when I responded to this letter, a sense of validation. So by me saying, you know what, it does suck, you know, and it is ridiculous that there are toxins in your products, you know, let alone, you know, I often deal with mothers that, you know, in the baby products that you're putting on your children's bodies. People feel betrayed. You know, like, who put this stuff in there? Why is it in there? And why do I now, as an individual, have to be savvy about how I shop? Why shouldn't there just be safer products on the shelves? And so this was one piece of sort of individual behavior change where we looked at, you know, here's one small step and here's something that we can do to get you to be proactive in sourcing safer products. But at the same time, we had a science and policy campaign going on, which was, you know, sign this letter, we're taking our action forward to Health Canada so that there are safer products on the shelves. But until we get there, you know, it took 2 years to ban BPA in baby bottles. They eventually declared it toxic in Canada, and we were the first government to do so. But it took 2 years to do that. So in the meantime, you know, you're going to reduce your toxic exposure. This is something you can do in your home. One of the other, oh, sorry.
I was just thinking, you know, you could start by saying, thank you for reading it. And thank you for really considering what forward a lot of people would.
Yeah, thoughtful.
Way, right?
That's right.
And
Because sometimes you have to get
So it's sort of like
frustrated.
half the battle, yeah, like, okay, you're showing concern, now what can you do to put that into action?
Well, I'm glad you reminded me, because I did want to finish the letter. I'll read you the first excerpt here. First of all, I think that the concern, research, and work you do for the foundation is great, and I've supported you in the past, and will continue to do so in the future. So at the end, he says, anyways, I'm sending $100, despite this frustration. Keep up the good work. I just hope that you don't bump into me somewhere sometime, because I'll just stink. And this was from Glen in Ontario. So yeah, he had got over that. But it was that, yeah, wanting to share, this really stinks in a few more ways than one. Another story that I want to share with you about a project that I worked on was greening a family. Recently it was called Greening the Smiths, because their name was actually the Smiths. We canvassed out with Canadian Living to get them to have their readers, so it wasn't just an eco-friendly family in Vancouver. It was actually canvassed out nationwide to Canadian Living subscribers to write in their letters of why they wanted a green makeover with the Queen of Green. And the winners was a family from St. Albert, Alberta, so just a burb outside of Edmonton, mother of 4, and a husband and wife of 4 kids. And basically they were at the level where they were recycling, like a lot of probably people that you know. And knew there was more they could do, but just didn't even know where to start or where to begin. So I went into her home and basically went room by room through a lot of her products and a lot of her, the way she was cooking food. And now, a year later, she's been making her own laundry soap for the whole year. She's been hanging her clothes to dry, driving a lot less. They started composting. She throws green birthday parties now for all her children, and pulled out her sewing machine again, started making some of her own cosmetic products, and she's now the local green expert in her cul-de-sac. Everyone comes to her to answer questions. As she was going through the green makeover and going out to the grocery store asking for organic produce or looking for liquid Castile soap in health food stores, they were saying, well, she said, well, I'm doing this thing where I'm supposed to like green my family, and people say, well, what does that involve, and what are you doing, and how do I do it too? So this was a really successful project where I got to take, one family from, who thought they wanted to be green and go forward with it. And I basically kept in touch with her every 2 weeks and sort of worked her through this process. But now my challenge is, and of course you have to, the other thing we've learned is you have to nurture the newly converted. So I can't now just, so this is a year later, just send her off on her merry way. So now we're looking at building, because Lindsay cannot go out to every household as much as I would love to across Canada and green all these families. We're looking at sort of a formula of green coaches, or I already know there's lots of Queen of Greens out there and people doing some things. So now we're looking at using those people's stories, because it's not just about David doing this or me doing this, and because I live in the greenest city in Vancouver, okay, well, it's easy for you to do this. It's actually having other people take the message out.
What issue of Canadian Living?
This was in the April, so this was like Earth Day.
April this year.
Yeah, of 2011. But you can continue to read more about the Smiths. They're quite amazing, and I'll tell you what when I checked in with her just recently, it was a year later, she said, it was totally your guidance and encouragement that got me to take a serious look at the things, at a lot of things, and start to make some changes in our lifestyle to where we are now. It really spurred me on to make immediate changes, and there's others that have been ongoing. So you might think that, and I often think about this too, starting with making laundry soap in your home, it's kind of a small step. Does she really understand climate change? Is it enough? Is it too late? But it was a really good segue to start empowering someone to do something that, this was a mom of 4. She was doing laundry out the wazoo, and she was already washing in cold water. She was doing, some of the other eco tips, but it had never occurred to her to sort of, let's say, make her own laundry soap and get rid of the toxins and things that she was using. Later that summer, when they went on their family vacation, she bought carbon offsets. She didn't even know what carbon offsets were. She would have never considered that before. If you would have started messaging to her or talking to Canadians about offsetting their emissions, you probably wouldn't have got very far. So sometimes it's about starting, of course, where people are at, And that's why the next activity that we're going to do for the remainder of the workshop is really looking at, I know you guys are in this room not because you're overwhelmed or hopeless or don't know where to start or have any ideas. I know you have ideas, and I know you have groups that you're associated with, other organizations. Maybe it's a youth group, maybe it's your kids' soccer team, maybe it's at your workplace. But there's maybe some actions you've thought about taking. For example, some really simple ones I've done in the workplace. I'm always that person, Janice will know, that's saying, we're having a clothing swap next week, people. Who's going to join to keep textile waste out of the landfill and stop people from consuming so much? I started the soup club at our office. So, you know, over 11 weeks, you make soup once, you get 10 free lunches. And you get away from your desk and you get to communicate and connect with other co-workers you might not otherwise chat with in a day. I know you have, and so it can be something small, it can be something a lot bigger that maybe you're already working on, but I want you to take a few minutes to think about a project or something you could take forward. And using storytelling could be a piece of that, how you take an action forward. But something you could basically start leveraging and working on tomorrow. And we're going to share some of the ideas after to the group, and we'll see if we can't help each other out with a few of the ways that we haven't thought of connecting with others in our community on X topic. It could be, when I was thinking elders before, a huge barrier is, you know, kids not getting enough time in nature. And what the research shows is kids under 12 need to have meaningful experiences in nature, and really that's where we should be focusing on the reconnecting with nature. After 12 years old, they say, don't bother with it. But kids under 12. Because interestingly enough, another research, a piece of research has shown that when we're canvassed, when researchers canvass people about the two landscapes that you're drawn to, the first one is, people will answer savanna. What's savanna? It's not the prairies of Alberta where I grew up. It's where we evolved. People are drawn towards that single acacia tree out on a prairie, you know, sort of steppe landscape. The second landscape that people were always drawn to was the place where they grew up. And that was something that those were two landscapes that people are constantly drawn towards. So I started thinking, and just a really simple ask to anyone really is, what are you doing to get a 12-year-old experience in nature outside, before that they're 12? You don't have to be a Girl Guide or a youth leader or even a parent, that you don't have kids in your neighborhood or kids that, nieces and nephews that you're related to that you couldn't get out. So that was one idea. A walking school bus. So many kids don't walk to school because, well, we've built our cities, as one person put it, for fit 30-somethings. So can your 8-year-old child or your 80-year-old grandmother safely, get to the grocery store or walk anywhere when we continue to widen streets and speed up traffic? So a walking school bus, most parents will say, well, I don't let my kids walk to school, so it's not safe. Or never, they're worried about things. And so maybe it's about starting a community garden. Like, think about what you're already good at and the tools and the skills that you have. If it's gardening, maybe there's some sort of project you could start at the local school or community center about getting people to learn how to grow their own food, or start a composting program at your office. Or I know you already have these little seeds planted. So to the last group, I suggest you can think about this a little bit on your own, or you can go right into, people found it really helpful again to bounce some ideas off their partner again, and think about the action you want to take when you leave here and how you might make it happen. So I'm going to give you another 4 minutes to think about that, and we're going to share back some ideas.
Did you want something targeted specifically for younger people?
I'm just throwing that out there as an idea, but it has to be about what you're passionate about. You have to have buy-in to that, and you have to have access to a certain audience, and it has to be relevant to you and the people that you influence. So one thing I didn't touch on earlier of sort of how the Queen of Green came to be is, once upon a time, experts in our culture were doctors and lawyers and people of that stature. And more today, experts are people like you and me. And people look to their peers and other folks because they have value. And I'll share one last anecdote with you. One last story was a piece of research looked at getting energy use down this was in the States, this was BC Hydro. They put 3 different types of door hanging brochures on doorknobs. One said, reduce your energy use for future generations. The second said, reduce your energy use because you'll save 20 bucks a month on your energy bill. And the third one said, everyone else in your neighborhood's doing it, and they're saving money, and everyone's doing it. And so save money on your energy bill by doing these 5 steps. A couple months later, when they looked at before they even looked at the data, they surveyed people of their focus groups and asked them, why did you reduce your energy use? Everybody said it was because of money. Everyone said they wanted to save money on their energy bill. But the group that saved the most energy were those that had the door hanger that said everyone else is doing it. Nobody wants to be left behind. Nobody wants to be that last one on the block to get the blue box out, or whatever the social norm that we're trying to create. We know we don't, it doesn't take laws. Someone was saying doesn't need to be a law that says don't run naked through the streets. People just don't run naked through the streets. There's certain values and certain emotions and certain reasons that social pressure and peer pressure of why we don't do certain actions. So take those things into consideration about how you might move something forward, an agenda that you have. Like I say, it could be in your workplace, could be something in your community. It could be something as small as a woman in the last group just wanted to green her household a little bit and get her kids to start growing their own food and switch to green cleaners. And it doesn't have to be anything Queen of Green eating either. It's whatever is relevant, something that you know about, and that you have access to a group that you are a spokesperson to, where you are respected, and that you can actually lead. All right? Go. So just a little check-in. It's 2 o'clock, and we have until 2:30, so that will give you a chance to still have a coffee break and washroom break before David speaks. I wanted to give you some time now I always find in a workshop, this workshop and session isn't about me, and it's about what you guys can get out of it and what you can take home and pass on, but a really good workshop is always dependent on actually who's in the room, and that's where you'll get most of the learning from. So I wanted to share, if a few people felt comfortable sharing, just again like a little 1-minute intro, if that, 30-second intro as to what your project, what your idea, action might be, and if you're willing to have it sort of opened up so we might be able to give you some more ideas and some feedback. Who would like to?
This gal has got that's product.
Well,
and then we'll come to.
Anyways, I'm Nova, and this is Devin, and basically, actually, we have a lot of different ideas, and we're trying to what we first need to do is prioritize what we want to first accomplish. But right now, what we have is we bought an older home, and we did the whole Live Smart program where you go and you get your house assessed, and we're going through all of the upgrades, and as well as we live in Abbotsford, so we live on a quarter of an acre in town, and so we're actually dividing our garden space as well, so that we can share with our friends and our family on our blocks. So we're trying to do community-wise. And so also what we're kind of playing around with the idea is actually maybe starting a blog to document it. Because it's actually, there's a lot of easy upgrades that you can do to your house, as you know, that people just think, oh, you can't have a sustainable house, you have to have a lot of pocket money. But it's not the case. You can go down to Canadian Tire, pick up a $15 dual toilet flusher, put a brick in the back of your toilet, and there's easy ways like that. And so, anyways, we want to, try to document that.
That sounds cool. Does anyone have some ideas of how they might sort of leverage or go forward with that? What appeals to me is the community. Well, you've mentioned any of the tips, how you might be able to communicate that out, but the actual community garden piece, because you have the space.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to share?
Yeah.
I think it would be cool to get, and you're probably thinking of already reusing a lot of materials, like you don't even probably have to go out and buy new lumber. You could probably canvas around and see who's got scrap pallets and different things, or even get some stuff donated. You might want to look into, it's still school season, if maybe there's a class that wants to
Yeah, that's a good idea.
be involved somehow, and you could even look at doing, not just think of it as just a regular garden, but maybe doing a pollinator garden, butterfly garden, something like that.
And you might want to connect with a woman named April Reeves, R-E-E-V-E-S. She lives in Richmond, and she practices what she calls a special kind of gardening, which is very intense. What she calls.
Is it the one with the square
Square
foot?
foot.
No, even more so than that. And she grows her potatoes. Tomatoes grow up. Everything grows up, so you don't need much space. And I can't remember the name. And what she did is she sold her farm. She bought a regular lot in Richmond and turned everything that was grass is all garden now. And she makes $60,000 a year selling this organic produce. She does better in this than she did on her big farm.
Does she have a website, a Facebook page?
If you want to be a bit socially conscious, you can also raise beds so that the disabled can
Yeah.
garden. There's an app to go off in community gardens.
Sure, my project is already in progress.
Okay.
I'm collaborating on a book with a woman who teaches philosophy in California. It's called Becoming Intimate with the Earth Through Science, Song, and Story. And we've got a publishing date of spring of 2013, so I've got new things. And so the whole idea of the book is not to have it be a nice, cozy read where people are just going to sit on the sofa and keep reading. Every chapter at the end is going to have resources. It's going to be people who are actually making a difference. There'll be resources to different YouTube videos, so that they can get inspired to the ideas to light a fire on other people, so that they can, either start a similar thing, whatever it is. And so I was hoping today that anybody that is doing some kind of things like that, I've already met a couple of people.
Sure.
That would be good to include in the resources at the back of the book, actually after every chapter. So it's about, we're looking at story and how the story that we tell shapes our behavior, right?
Yes. And you're open to different tactics of how you actually get that message out.
Yes.
Do you have an idea?
Well, yeah, people keep telling me I should write, and they touch on the story.
Sorry, you mind speaking a little bit?
Oh, okay. Sorry. So I've been thinking about using my writing ability to tell a story, exactly to light a fire under people. When you mentioned everybody else is doing it, to say that not everybody is apathetic. Look at all these people, to just kind of share the excitement of what good things are happening. And when you're talking about so as you were talking, I'm thinking, I could write an article for Zoomer, or maybe for CARP, and sort of aimed at older people, and you don't just have to retire on the couch, and this is what active people are doing. And so I would love to get your contact information if you could tell me a little bit about what you're doing with your book, and then make that part of the article.
Sure.
So we've got a good synergy.
Yes.
Anyone else wanted to share a new idea?
Sure. So I came here in 2009 for the first one. I work for an environmental nonprofit, and I develop programming, social and environmental programming. And what we're trying to do now is engage groups that traditionally haven't been engaged in environmental work, and we're trying to make it very intergenerational. So I've been focusing on youth, but I'd really like to focus on elders, and we're having a really tough time engaging elders into our work. And Stan and I were just discussing what kind of networks there to be, if there's any, so if any of you have any ideas about how.
Where does the project take place, Stephanie, or is it place-based?
We have, no, we don't. We have one project right now. It's a community garden on school property that's taken care of by the school in the winter, and a retirement home in the summer, which is working out really, really well, because that's a kind of traditional problem for school gardens. But we really open to any project, because we want to fund these, we want to look for funding, we want to develop these projects. It's really a group that we really like to engage and are having a lot of trouble. This is the only place that I've come where I can network elders. And so I'm just wondering if anyone has any suggestions for how
ideas
making that work easier.
I actually know two different groups that are talking. One's called Older to Elder, and there's another one, he's out in Abbotsford, and I can, if you give me your card, I can send you.
Sure.
Any other feedback for what we've heard, or you want to start with another new one?
I just want to say that Jake and I here, my new friend Jake, and I, we had an interesting experience talking about the types of things we can do, and I spent the whole time talking about what I can do at work, about recycling wood. I'm in the wood industry, so recycling wood, and things as simple as starting to recycle paper towels out of a hand dispenser, which immediately goes from pen to trash, which is obviously just wet paper. It's not necessarily garbage. And Jacob here has now held me accountable that by December 2nd, I must have the paper recycling program done in the office, and he's going to follow up with me, and I'm going to explain to him when it's complete. And this is very interesting because I'm a kind of a self-managed guy, but this has been on the top of my list for months and months and months, but I just can't get the time to do it. I can't get my managers on my side because they don't see the dollars and cents in it. This gentleman here is going to kick me in the gear, apparently.
You got a fan. Sorry, you wanted to share.
The Paddle for the Planet that I'm doing is kind of a seemingly related but yet unrelated project. And unfortunately, a lot of the gear that we use for stand-up paddle surfing is not totally environmentally friendly by any stretch of the imagination. So what I've discovered over the last year of doing this project is if you can capture people's imagination with something, you get a lot more involvement. And one of the ways we're doing that with Paddle for the Planet is we're looking at what can we build that's environmentally friendly for a stand-up paddleboard. And of course, wood is at the top of the list. There's boards out there for years and years. So that's one of the things that we're working on as a project. But as far as getting a message out there, the way I've done it, I had no budget. It's basically started out as a one-person project, and it's morphed into this all kinds of people involved project. I've had a lot of help from the industry, so I tackled it from the stand-up paddle surfing industry, where I did have connections, and it's just kind of spread out from there. So you can identify, a core group of people that you can go after, and then it kind of spreads from there. And it's got to the point now where media's gotten involved. I get invitations for radio shows and TV stuff and all that.
Something that strikes me about that is, we know our culture's like, there's creative people out there. And the nice thing that I don't have to worry about every day is that I don't have to solve this, and I surely can't do it alone. And lots of other people have come up with so many other solutions. I wonder if you wouldn't, because I'm thinking, I have an engineering husband, I'm thinking an engineer, if you wouldn't want to approach a university class, like an engineering class or something, about how would you create, out of waste or out of whatever, like a paddle, like actually put it to a school or a class. Because at the David Suzuki Foundation, we found, some of our really most amazing, creative, cool projects has been when classrooms come to us post-secondary and they need a project to do, let's say, a direct how you get donors to donate on cause X. And they go away and play with it, or they develop the Pull Focus Film School developed a video for us. We don't have the in-house resources, like you say, you're resource limited. We didn't have the ability to do it, and a lot of those groups and think tanks they're looking for ideas. They just need an idea, and most of us are full of ideas, but we don't have the resources, and so you might, I don't know, that's my idea, would be connect with a university or.
And here's an example of that. It's a good friend of mine, Norm Hahn, who did a 400K paddle from Kitimat to Bella Bella to bring attention to the Enbridge project up north. He's quite connected with the native communities up there, and he inspired one of the local teachers to have their class. They built 12 boards in a woodworking shop and launched them this
awesome.
This
okay, so there, yeah.
Phenomenal project.
That's cool.
Yeah. And we're also looking into, right at the moment, using pine beetle wood, which up in our neck of the woods is a huge resource, but what do you do with it?
Does anyone else have any ideas for Bob?
BCIT and the Emily Carr College, we specialize in design. BCIT would certainly be in the technological aspects of it.
It's awesome.
Stephanie? And
Well, Green Surfboards makes gorgeous hollow wooden surfboard. I don't know if you know them.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, and they're looking to come through. I think they're invited to Haida Hawaii to do some surfboard building up there, and if they decide to, we'll have them.
There's this whole little movement going on up there.
Yeah,
And
the ideas
people know about
percolating.
it, you know, and that's the thing, there's so many cool things going on.
Well, you have a book,
Yeah.
and you've got a writer, too, to share some of these great ideas.
I'd also like to say, I just discovered this last night, and I haven't fully explored it, but I think it's got a really exciting potential. There, if you Google Occupy Studio, somebody in California has bankroll, sort of like a YouTube, only with larger bandwidth, and the idea of it is that people can go on and tell their stories and say what they're doing, and so.
Good news, all good news stories.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's all good news. But yeah, I think it could use.
That was one real sticking point that I worked on with the Smiths because the woman was doing a lot of laundry. I've got some green cleaning recipes that I've printed out from our website, and one of the cool things we've also developed to kind of get people, lots of people wanted to, well, I wish my relatives would make this, or I wish I could get someone else to make this, is we've got stickers now. So when you make your laundry soap or your glass cleaner, you can now put what it is on it. This might help. In my case, my husband knew what my concoctions were, and he could use it, help a lot easier. And you can also gift the stuff. So I always make green cleaning kits for my friends that have just moved, for someone who's had a new baby, and instead of preaching to them about why do you use bleach or X toxic subject, you just give them the new good stuff. So there's some sticker sheets here that you can grab, and of course our shopper's guide to the Dirty Dozen when you're done with your letter. That's free for